This is the Content Marketing Podcast, episode number 74, Content Marketing on LinkedIn, an interview with J.D. Gershbein, also known as the LinkedIn Catalyst. Hello and welcome to the Content Marketing Podcast. This is the show where we help you attract and retain business through the power of quality content. I'm your host, Rachel Parker of Resonance Content Marketing, and today is June 5th, 2014. Hello, and thank you for joining us today for episode number 74 of the Content Marketing Podcast. Just a reminder, we are live on iTunes and on Stitcher, so if you're listening to this episode on the blog, you can click on over and subscribe. That means you'll get new episodes automatically delivered to your smartphone or your iPod or your listening device of choice. And if you use a different app for your podcast listening pleasure, we also have an RSS feed, and I will provide that link in the blog post. In last week's podcast, we talked about video. Specifically, we busted some of the big myths and misconceptions that might be holding you back from adding video to your content marketing strategy. If you happen to miss that episode, feel free to click on over to iTunes or to Stitcher or to the RSS feed and get all caught up. So that brings me to today's topic. Today we are going to be talking about content marketing on LinkedIn, and we have a very special guest that is J.D. Gershbein, also known as the LinkedIn Catalyst. But first, let's check in with our news feed for this week's rundown of news you can use. Honestly, folks, it's been a pretty slow week in the socialverse. Not a whole lot going on right now. I don't know if we're still all in barbecue comas after Memorial Day, but a pretty slow week, but I'm sure that will change. The one item I have this week is that Facebook now allows restaurants to display menus on their pages. So in addition to providing other things diners are going to be looking for, like their hours and their location, restaurant pages can now upload menus, and they can do that through an app called Single Platform that is from Constant Contact. And what Single Platform is, it's an online listing service that helps local businesses connect and engage with consumers by showcasing menus, products and services, photos, specials, and more. So if you are in the restaurant industry, I recommend you check out Single Platform so you can get that menu listed on your Facebook page. So that's it for the news. This week, our content hit of the week, and each week I like to share one juicy piece of content that I really enjoyed over the past week. And today we have 7 essential free tools. Ooh, got your attention with free, didn't I? 7 essential free tools for social media design, and that is by Emily Tang on the Social Media Today blog. You know, visuals are so important in today's social media, and I'm sure you've heard that they get the most likes, the most comments, the most shares on Facebook, on Twitter, and yes, even LinkedIn is getting in on the visual content sharing game. So in this post, Emily shares some free tools that can help you create your own eye-catching visuals from an image creation program, kind of like a Photoshop Lite, if you will. There are apps that let you search fonts, all kinds of cool stuff, and it's all free, and it all seems pretty easy to use. So wanted to be sure and share that with you. Anyway, it's a great read, great resources, and I will share that link on the blog post if you want to go check that out. Again, that is 7 Essential Free Tools for Social Media Design by Emily Tang on the Social Media Today blog. That is it for this week's update. Very short and sweet this time around. If you stumble across anything you think might be of interest to your fellow content marketers, please shoot it on over to us so we can share, and I will provide that contact information at the end of the podcast. Now it's time for this week's Spotlight segment. I am so excited for this week's interview. We are going to be talking about content marketing on LinkedIn, and to tell us about that is going to be J.D. Gershbein, also known as the LinkedIn Catalyst. Today we are delighted to welcome a very special guest on the podcast to talk about content marketing on LinkedIn. Since 2006, J.D. Gershbein, CEO of Owlish Communications, has helped advance the collective awareness of LinkedIn and inspired opportunity-oriented professionals in all walks of business to step up and achieve on the site. His ability to spark others to action has earned him the moniker of the LinkedIn Catalyst. J.D. is considered one of the world's top thought leaders on LinkedIn strategy and a pioneer in the design and delivery of LinkedIn education. He is also a globally acclaimed social business psychologist, speaker, and frequent broadcast media expert on LinkedIn for Business. Additionally, J.D. is an adjunct professor of marketing communications at the Illinois Institute of Technology's Stewart Graduate School of Business, where he is advancing social media marketing as an academic discipline. His first book, The LinkedIn Edge, Creating a Psychological Advantage in Social Business, is due out in fall 2014. Can't wait to get my hands on that one. For more information on J.D., you can visit LinkedIn, and his URL is linkedin.com/in/J.D. Gershbein, and I will spell that out for you at the end of the podcast. So without further ado, here is my interview with the LinkedIn Catalyst himself, J.D. Gershbein. Hey, J.D., welcome to the podcast.
I am delighted to be here.
How's life in Chicago these days?
Well, at the time of our taping, we have glorious summer weather after putting up with one of the worst winters we've ever seen. And living in Chicago, we kind of wear those nasty winters on our sleeves like a badge of honor.
There you go. Well, hey, here in Texas, we had one day with, like a quarter inch of ice. So, we feel like we share that badge with you now.
How do you people live out there?
No. It's tough. We pay our dues during the summer, though.
Well, true. Everybody does. No matter where you live, the elements are going to find you.
Right, exactly. So, JD, I have just read your official bio, of course. So can you give us a little more personal introduction and tell us about how you came to be the LinkedIn Catalyst?
Well, thank you for having me, Rachel. Sure. I do appreciate your interest in my work. And for those who are listening, I spoke on May 15th to the Houston chapter of the Business Marketing Association, the BMA, and Rachel was in my audience and kind enough to invite me here. Well, I've been doing full immersion LinkedIn work for about 8 years now at the time of this taping. And early into the work, there wasn't much to sell. There wasn't much to offer. We were a few people trying to figure our ways around this website we got, and kind of right at the forefront of the social media revolution. And as time has progressed, I've observed very carefully what's been going on in society. I've kind of monitored the trends. I've gauged behavioral shifts, and I've really seen LinkedIn kind of come full circle, especially in the last couple of years. And over the last couple of years, there's certainly been no shortage of people out there speaking about LinkedIn and social media in general. So what I did, Rachel, was quite frankly study what they were doing, and which is what I was doing 8 years ago, and just started to move off in different directions and drive a niche that was based on neuroscience and psychology, and really kind of brought out my credential as a social business psychologist. And my speeches, my talks, my keynotes, they got to be a little bit more inspirational and motivational in nature. And I kept hearing from people that I had motivated them, or I had sparked them to really take a look at this site and create some positive change for themselves. And I remember after one of my talks, someone told me that I was a catalyst, and it kind of stuck, and incorporated that into my branding. It wasn't something I needed to outsource. It just kind of came to me. So I've been the LinkedIn Catalyst for some time, but officially in my branding probably within the last year.
Awesome. Before we get into your specialty, I just want to get people caught up on LinkedIn, because it's, as you mentioned, it's undergone a tremendous transformation in just a few years. So if you were talking to someone who says, wow, I really haven't been on LinkedIn, what's been going on out there? How would you summarize where LinkedIn is today versus where it was just a couple of years ago?
Well, it really is on a path of change, and it keeps changing. And it's going to change even more. So don't get used to what you have, because you're going to need to course correct on the fly. Exactly. I remember sitting in a hotel room in San Francisco getting ready to deliver a talk the next day, and I had just seen in April 2011 that LinkedIn had eclipsed the 100 million mark. and they had moved from 85 million to 100 million in the course of 90 days.
Mm-hmm.
That's 5 million new users a month. At the time, it was their biggest growth curve in their history.
Mm-hmm.
And now, I mean, there's all sorts of staggering statistics about how many people are coming on board. We're at over 300 million users at the time we're taping this program. But what's happening is on all fronts, the aesthetic nature of the LinkedIn profile, the features and functionality of the site,
Right.
the way that LinkedIn is moving us closer to the people who inhabit our network, really focusing on one-on-one interactions now and managing a community. I mean, truly managing a community is a full-time job. So all of the changes that are coming down the pike now, I think, are designed to make it a little easier for LinkedIn users, certainly a little easier for LinkedIn users who are willing to pay the premium program to the company for the privileges of getting the additional features. But it's just become a more vibrant visual medium. It's true social media now.
Absolutely. And you know, JD, sometimes I still talk to people and I'll mention, well, are you on LinkedIn? And they'll say, oh, no, I already have a job.
Exactly.
Do you get that?
I get it a lot.
Uh-huh.
I get it from people in corporate who sit next to me at the computer saying, you know, JD, I don't know why the company put me in front of you. I'm not looking for a job.
Right.
And I'm not going to do LinkedIn anyway.
Exactly. So speaking of that, speaking of people who are on LinkedIn, sometimes I talk to people and they say, "Oh, you know, I'm trying to reach high-level executives." They don't do that social thing. They're not gonna go into LinkedIn and check out what's going on. And I don't see that. I don't know about you.
Well, there's a whole movement around professional development, getting people to decision makers. Those are usually the C-suite, the senior executives. And you are correct, Rachel. There are more C-level executives coming on board LinkedIn, but I don't think you're going to see the ivory tower mentality play out on a site like LinkedIn, because the executives are focused on leading. They're not connected to social media. They know it exists. I don't think they're denying it anymore. They certainly realize the utility of a site like LinkedIn in their business, but it's not for them to worry about. It's for the CMO, for the chief experience officer, for the chief learning officer, and for the chief security officer as well. So the executive, again, he or she is focused on leading the company, driving the vision, aligning with the goals, etc. But I think what we are seeing is the passing fad status that CEOs once gave to LinkedIn is definitely in diminishment now, and we're seeing more and more C-levels step up and acknowledge the reality of the site.
Yep, absolutely. So, GD, you want to get into a little bit more about your work? I know when I signed up for your luncheon at BMA, I have to admit I kind of said, oh, another LinkedIn expert. That's great. We're going to hear about endorsements. We're going to hear about, you should have a profile picture. And then I saw your title slide, which is where you talk about the neuroscience and psychology of LinkedIn. I said, whoa, this guy's different. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I think people early on, when they see me hit the stage and after a minute or two, they realize that this is not their grandfather's LinkedIn presentation. And that, again, is from the first moments I was on with you, I really studied the landscape and have driven a niche in an entirely different way. It really is getting derivative and redundant out there with everybody. I mean, every LinkedIn expert, self-proclaimed LinkedIn authority, saying the same thing, and it's boring people. And it's not only boring people, but they're still not taking the heed. So how much and how often can we say it? What I've tried to do is explain to folks that LinkedIn works at the highest intellectual and emotional centers of the brain. How else can you explain the fact that we can convert raw data on a computer screen, process it into useful business information that we can use to make a sale, to provide a service, to get a job? We are really shifting the paradigm here, and we're discovering our influence in different ways. We're really looking at this site as a means to create transformational change. And that's what I focus on, Rachel. I'm interested in the behaviors. I'm interested in the critical thinking. I'm interested in the way people assimilate into LinkedIn culture. And I'm interested in seeing them actually find their place in an online community, which many people sadly can't do. It's interesting work, and doing it on that level, for me, I'm able to lead people to the outcomes they want, not by showing them what everybody else is telling them, because you can Google that. Any tactic, any trick, any technique, that's all out there. It's been written to death.
Mm-hmm.
But on an individual basis, I encourage people to, I grant them autonomy and let them develop their own take on this. And that's what works. And it works for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned that LinkedIn appeals to the highest and the highest intellectual and emotional sections of the brain. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, that would be your amygdala, Rachel.
Okay.
We
What is
have
my amygdala, JD?
your amygdala is a nice little bilateral structure that occupies the limbic ring. It's part of the limbic system, along with the hippocampus and the cingulate gyrus. And for all the PhDs in neuroscience who are listening, I'm sure they're smiling right now. But it's basically a very delicate framework that involves learning and memory and attention. And how we put a system of beliefs in place that justifies our willingness to connect with people, our willingness to explore and learn more about them, and quite frankly, how we buy. I mean, it's an alien concept for some people, but we are actually buying people sight unseen based on how they present
Hmm.
on LinkedIn and in their LinkedIn profile.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what amazes me, and that's where the focus of my work is, and getting people to accept what they see on face value, let their perceptions drive their realities to a point, and do excellent social business and use the site in the way that I think it was intended to be used.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people kind of see LinkedIn, they kind of rattle off when they ask me where they should be, they should rattle off, oh, should I be on Facebook? Should I be on Twitter? Should I be on LinkedIn? What is unique about LinkedIn among its peers, shall we say?
Context.
Mm.
It is a professional site.
Yeah.
It operates within the confines of a business conversation. So the activities, ideally, are professional, although they are taking on a little bit more of the Facebook model the more we go along. I mean, if I see the "Solve if you are a genius" post one more time on my LinkedIn page, I may hemorrhage at this point. Uh,
Right.
but I think what you are seeing is the humanization of the platform.
Mm.
It's not all about just being politically correct, which is important.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want to ruffle feathers. We don't want to offend the sensibilities of anybody, but we are trying to exert our humanity. And I think we're seeing this more and more. And we're also seeing more and more how LinkedIn is changing lives.
Mm-hmm.
When you go on sites like Facebook
Mm-hmm.
or Twitter or YouTube, you're still seeing the sharing. You're becoming part of a community experience. But on LinkedIn, you're in front of the people who control the purse strings, who can bring you into their enterprise, who will buy from you.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a delicate conversation. It's a delicate means of persuading them to take action with you. But again, it comes down to context and the gravitas of what we see on the site.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And you mentioned that conversation can be delicate. I've had the experience of accepting an invitation from someone who may be a connection of a connection, and then within 5 minutes of accepting that invitation, that person is in my inbox trying to sell me something. So
Yeah,
so how do you find that
absolutely.
balance? How do you find that sweet spot between being, Mr. Pushy sales guy and being in the friend zone?
Well, you're always going to see that. I don't think that's anything that's going to change. I think it's been subdued a little bit. I've had people sell me on invitations to connect.
Mm-hmm.
So I think when you're talking about a business social networking site, you're going to have people selling you. They're going to sell you at every turn.
Yep.
We're selling at all times. You and I are selling here,
Mm-hmm.
but we're earning the right to sell because we're providing value in return.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm willing to take a look at someone's email newsletter. I'm willing to be hijacked to their blog within the thread of a group discussion if I'm getting good value.
Mm-hmm.
And how we define that value, that's all. It's individual. What I think is valuable, someone else might not. But I'm willing to take a call to action if I feel it means something. If I feel that the individual or company has earned it. And that's where I think we draw the line. People are selling, they are marketing, they
Mm-hmm.
are advertising, they
Mm-hmm.
are promoting, they are currying favor. And I look at that, I observe that, I have fun with it. I
Mm-hmm.
say, here's someone who's reaching out, trying to get me to look at their stuff. What could be
Mm-hmm.
more business oriented than that?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So, JD, when corporations and when businesses, when they seek you out and want to engage your services, what kind of problems are they dealing with? What drives them to pick up the phone and call you?
Well, for one, what we saw in the early going with LinkedIn, I'd say I put it right around 2008, 2009. You had a lot of companies who were kind of at the leading edge of this, and all they were doing, Rachel, were taking a few meetings and constructing a big 500-page loose leaf bound notebook that they put on everybody's shelf and called it the social media policy. And it was basically kind of a bloated treatment as to how people should comport themselves on these sites. Now it's different. Now companies see the opportunity, how boundless it is, and the value of putting their people in contact with those they need to network with. Have a company presence on the site, construct a LinkedIn company page, evangelize people within the company to be real spokespeople and ambassadors of their products and services. So the problems are they don't know who to isolate. Their executive team is usually poorly represented on LinkedIn, and it always comes down to LinkedIn profiles. I'm a LinkedIn profile content provider. I like to call myself a LinkedIn profile architect, which is a differentiator for me. So I really work with people to build out these profiles in a very meaningful way and set people up for the outcomes they want. Very client-centered content. So I think that's the nature of the problem. Companies have not really formulated a strategic plan as to how to approach LinkedIn. It's kind of the wild, wild west for them. They're out there, their people are out there, their recruiting faction is out there, their executives are represented but only in name only with very little content on their profile pages. So I think suddenly we're seeing companies wanting to unify all of this content and tell more of a story about their companies.
So if it is a Wild West, you're the wise Indian chief guide who kind of navigates them through the dangerous territories and gets them where they want to go.
Well, maybe I'm the marshal.
Okay, the marshal.
I'm the temporary marshal brought
Okay.
in, and I'm wearing the star for the time being.
Great. Got it. So one of the more recent developments in LinkedIn, and one that I'm really excited about, is that LinkedIn is evolving into a publishing platform, something they introduced recently, and I'm excited because I just got access to it. So tell us a little bit
Right.
about that and how it works and where it's going.
LinkedIn Publishing. When it first came out, when I got it, it was really an extension of the LinkedIn Influencer program. And I put in for this a while ago. I almost didn't remember that I did request it, but it came to me out of the blue like it's coming for scores of LinkedIn users right now. They basically just access a message from LinkedIn in their inbox, and they have LinkedIn Publishing. But for me, I'm a content provider. I know you are as well. And we have our stories around our company. And what LinkedIn Publishing allows us to do right now is become very efficient and proficient brand storytellers and generate content on LinkedIn. It is on the LinkedIn site. It's a contained, dedicated blog platform intrinsic to LinkedIn, so all the content stays therein. But you do have the ability to do some great social sharing with it and attract attention to it through your LinkedIn profile page. So it's really going to revolutionize the way that we post updates, the way that we manage our communities and refer our professional networks to stuff that we've done. And once everybody gets it, again, it's going to be another another episode of the Wild Wild West. Or maybe
Right.
a different Marshall, but you're going to have people fighting for an already swollen homepage for the attention span of their readers. And attention is our most precious commodity today, Rachel, and it doesn't come easy. So you have to fight to be noticed. But it's a great content marketing platform. It really sets LinkedIn up for people to spend more time on the site and prepare content to a targeted audience.
Absolutely. So if someone, let's say someone running a business or a CMO running a marketing organization, and they already have a good content marketing plan going, where do you see LinkedIn Publishing fitting into whatever they might currently have going on?
Well, even LinkedIn, in their writings, have said that this is not meant to usurp any blogging that they're doing. As we speak, I am a blogger for the Huffington Post, and I also do a blog on my own called The Wisdom Zone, which can be accessed on my website. So I've got a lot of content. The question is, do I have enough content to go around and not to repeat myself? Well, as a content marketer, you know that there's evergreen content, and there's content that makes you relevant, and there's content that you write exclusively for the search engines. So I'm trying to take a page out of the content marketer's playbook and do what's right. and write pieces on LinkedIn that are truly representative of my platform, of what I'm trying to communicate as a thought leader, or to whatever extent I'm perceived as such,
Mm-hmm.
but also to help people learn how to write blogs, how to publish blogs, and what to write about, how to structure blogs. I have my own maverick way of rendering text and images, and if people want to take a look and borrow and learn, and it frees them up to do what they want to do, that's great. Um, but ideally, they should have their own voice.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what LinkedIn publishing truly gives the LinkedIn user, is his or her unique voice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So if someone say has a blog going on their own website, what might they think, how might they see it differently between their own blog and LinkedIn? Do you see a difference in topics they should address, or approaches, longer or shorter? Any key differences you see popping up?
You know, that's interesting. I've actually been toying with the idea of doing very quick bursts on LinkedIn publishing. These are going to be archived and cataloged on your LinkedIn profile page, so those who do access you on LinkedIn can get to your portfolio of content.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes having good little quick read blogs are a nice mix with the more longer didactic prose that some people tend to write, myself included.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm kind of mixing it up a little bit. I've got some interesting ideas that are just engineered to make people think or take personal inventory right there on the spot, and
Mm-hmm.
then I'll move on to the next piece, which is it's designed to really show people to do a very important skill or function on the site. So,
Mm-hmm.
and then it may not be regarding LinkedIn altogether. I'm feeling myself branch out in other territories regarding social business and bringing in behavior shifts and neuroscience, and I'm fascinated by how the brain interprets content on the internet. So you'll be seeing some of that from me, but I think it definitely gives us freedom to flight,
Mm-hmm.
and the ability to link to our blogs as well. So you've got creative linking and sharing that you'll see on this site. It's very fertile to bring people to your site from LinkedIn Publishing as well.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. So, so for those of us who enjoy creating content and creating content's what they do, how would you speak to the person who is already overloaded, trying to keep up with all their social networks, trying to keep up with their blog, and I can almost hear, foreheads being smacked as they say, "Oh, now I've got to start creating content on LinkedIn." So how does that fit in? We only have so much time, we only have so much attention. How does that fit into an already busy content development schedule, publishing on LinkedIn?
That is a great question. It's probably the question for most people. And becoming proficient at the same time you're becoming efficient on LinkedIn is truly a daily challenge.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for people who are very immersed in content marketing, it's just, as you say, it's an add-on to the calendar. It's which piece gets LinkedIn this week or every couple days.
Mm-hmm.
LinkedIn recommends that you post once a week, but there are going to be prolific content marketers who are out there using this LinkedIn publishing platform as a way to generate more content and more traffic streams to their primary and secondary websites.
Mm-hmm.
If people already have an existing blog, it becomes a very powerful way to route content. If they're just starting out, they do not have a blog on their primary website, this is a great indoctrination into the art and science of blogging.
Mm-hmm.
And it shouldn't surprise anybody that if you feel there's a glut of LinkedIn experts out there, that same glut is telling people how to write blogs and develop a blog that can generate revenue or leads.
Mm-hmm.
And there are any number of sources people can turn to just gain traction on writing a blog. And if LinkedIn becomes that platform that they use, they can start to develop their own little content library and move it offline to their own blog at some point in the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely. So, getting back to your approach to the neuropsychology, how does this publishing platform help us to kind of deepen that relationship that we're developing with people as we appeal to their intellectual and emotional, that amygdala that we talked about earlier?
Well, the way I see it, the way that LinkedIn is reshaping social business, I mean, when you define the movement in social, there are, I think, three things that have moved to the core of the work. One is brand storytelling.
Mm.
That's developing and writing the story. Then there's content marketing, which is selling the story, getting the story into the eyes and minds of your network or professional community. And then there's community management, which is living the story. So let's take brand storytelling first, which is really the art and science of cutting the story. How do we tell our brand story? Not everybody is destined to be a great storyteller, and we are encouraged by so many people out there writing to be storytellers that what this does in our minds, Rachel, it creates stress for some people who just don't feel that they can tell the story, or that maybe their story isn't good enough, or maybe it's not believable enough, or maybe they can't even walk their talk and live their story. But they've got to start somewhere, because this is what the digital era is encouraging us to do, is to capture minds and hearts and create a culture around ourselves and or our companies. And we do that through crafting the story. Content marketing, when you sell the story, you have the words, you have the graphics, you have the images and the sound bites. Now you have to get it out there. You have to disseminate it. And we have many available channels on and off of LinkedIn to do that. And it's interesting that what people are calling content marketing today was content marketing when man first communicated with the first grunts back, hundreds of millions of years ago. I mean, we've been content marketing long before the term got popular. And on LinkedIn, there are just a lot of portals through which to market content, starting with the LinkedIn profile. Your LinkedIn profile is, in essence, content marketing. And the third piece is community management, what some might call community engagement, and that is living the story. And that's taking all these people that you've assembled and brought to your network, or people who have aggregated to you because they like what you have to say and they like the way you say it, and they're really being the conduit. They're the vessel. They become the channel through which your message is disseminated. Word of mouth. And when your legend builds inside your own tribe, then it's a lot easier to expand outwards. And what LinkedIn Publishing is going to do is make sure that megaphone gets bigger and wider and louder. But it still comes down to how you tell the story, how you write the story, where you put it, and who hears it. And it's not that they exist separately, Rachel. I think there's a triangulation of all of this. And you tell the story, you market the story, and you manage the people who are hearing the story and create a dialogue inside your community. All of that operates under the common thread of change. And a triangle, as we know, is the Greek symbol is delta, delta meaning change. Yeah. And we're all changing. We're all... we all have aspects of our brand stories that change over time, and sometimes the real issue is not so much telling the story, but telling the story as it's changing and reinventing yourself and letting your LinkedIn profile pace with every reinvention and making sure people still know what you do if they haven't visited your LinkedIn profile in about 3 or 4 years. So how we adapt, how we react, how we manipulate our environment, and how we change up our stories will affect the way that we market them.
Definitely. So, JD, I like that you brought up the community engagement factor, because I think when people say, "Oh, great, a new publishing platform, a new megaphone where I can blast out my stuff," how do we balance being publishers, and how do we leverage being publishers with that community engagement piece?
Well, one thing I do tell people who want to have that community presence is not everybody is going to see you or hear you, and not everybody's going to be all that interested in you. And you're going to encounter some indifference and preoccupation along the way, and you shouldn't take that as personal. It almost becomes kind of a direct marketing approach, where if you put your story in front of 100 people, you may have 20 to 30 people who read it. Impressions are hard to come by these days, as we all know. And how do we really know that the impression is more than just a cursory look on a page and that they're actually reading our content? Well, they comment, they like, they share, they post, they talk you up, they evangelize you. So the more evangelists that you can mobilize, I think that helps too. And that's what I try to impart to my clients, that sometimes 1 or 2 people who really dig your stuff is more important than 100 people who may not read your article the whole way.
Yeah, and we need to cultivate relationships with those evangelists as well, don't we?
Most definitely. Community engagement. They're there.
Mm-hmm.
And you shouldn't take that stuff lightly. When you see people liking or commenting or sharing anything you do on your homepage,
Mm-hmm.
that calls for a touch point. That is a huge opportunity when someone likes, comments, or shares you, because then you can go back to that individual and have a dialogue. I would say, Rachel, what did you like about that post that made you feel compelled to share it with your network? And you also thank them, I should say. Thank you, Rachel,
Mm-hmm.
for sharing. But at the same time, that's how you build relationships that are specifically designed to help you and you them.
Mm-hmm.
I share an inordinate amount of content on a daily basis. I read a lot of blogs. I'd like to read more. I just don't have the time.
Mm-hmm.
But I do what I can, and I'm highly promotional. I'm a good megaphone for people I like.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So JD, as we mentioned earlier, LinkedIn has just grown, just expanded light years from where it was just a couple of years ago. Where do you see any insights into where LinkedIn is going and where we might be seeing from it in the future?
Well, I think that content marketing is going to just become even more omnipresent. I don't think we can avoid it right now.
Mm-hmm.
Every story that's coming out is either a brand storytelling piece, a content marketing piece, or a community management piece. So I believe that I'm right there as we sit here and discuss this. But that's only going to get bigger and bolder and better because so many people have yet to discover it. They
Mm-hmm.
don't know how to tell their brand story.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to see a lot of adoption happening years later when maybe people who are at the forefront have slipped into some other sphere or the next big shiny thing,
Mm-hmm.
which I don't know what that is. I don't think anybody really knows. But I think you're going to see more people doing video marketing. I've said in my keynotes that I think the busiest people in the next 3 to 5 years are going to be video producers
Mm-hmm.
because people are going to realize just how important it is to get their message out there on YouTube, on LinkedIn, which has a rich media format that you can embed video right into the LinkedIn profile.
Mm-hmm.
And more people, I think, are going to leverage the visual media, and they're going to see how important it is, especially in an attention deficit society. They may not stop and read what you've written, but if they see a video that runs less than a minute with a launch button in front of your face,
Mm-hmm.
they're going to play it.
Yep. Yep, absolutely. And you mentioned that it's getting harder and harder to get those eyeballs on your content. So video is definitely one way to do that.
Yeah, I think so. And I also think you're going to see so many people generate opportunities from what they're doing on LinkedIn that it may take even more time away from the site. So, and that's kind of a good byproduct. I'm not sure this is an intention of LinkedIn's because they want to get more eyeballs to the site and they want to keep us on their site for longer periods of time.
Mm-hmm.
But what you're going to see is it's going to help people create offline opportunities. So they are going to be away from the site. They're going to be faced with brand on the run, with apologies to Paul McCartney, and do more mobile work. So I think you're going to see an enhanced mobile application. I think people are going to have to be much more agile and nimble on the mobile app than it already is because it's restrictive in many respects.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that you've got this kind of we're always accessible, we're always connectable, we're always responsive, and we just have to find a way now to tie in with the mothership of LinkedIn a little better than we have, and I think we will. I think LinkedIn is working on ways to just make sure that we are all on the site all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. JD, one thing that I neglected to mention when we first started chatting is that you have a book coming out. So tell us about that.
I got enough for about 10 or 12 books, Rachel. I think the goal is it would be nice to have one, wouldn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I actually am writing a couple concurrently, and actually have some very exciting publishing opportunities that I'm weighing as well. So I may do one in the form of an ebook and then one in the form of a hard copy book.
Okay.
My area is definitely the neuroscience and psychology piece. The working title is The LinkedIn Edge, Creating a Psychological Advantage in Social Business, because I truly feel that you can leverage the site in profoundly intellectual ways, and everything that we do on the site is behavioral. So the advantage has to be psychological. And I'm also culling success stories and life-changing stories and giving people a chance to take from my own story. I never, ever thought that what I was doing was heroic in any way. until recently when I started hearing from people who I met with or who I provided services for at the very start of my career who were able to change their lives. And they never communicated this to me previously until I'd get an email or a phone call and say, JD, the LinkedIn profile you wrote for me got me the job, or because of you showing me those little search tricks on the site, I was able to find clients and sell them. And I just feel like a magician on the site right now, thanks to you. And then the one most often now is that I've just inspired people to look at this and just develop their own ideas. I think we're kind of living in this very oppressed space where gee, maybe I'm not going to be good on social media. Maybe everybody else will achieve, I won't. But I'm letting people know that it's set up for everybody to succeed, and that is a subject of a book right now that I'm writing.
Absolutely. Can't wait. Well, JD, thank you so much for joining us today. If our listeners would like to find out more about you and what you do, where would they find you?
Well, it wouldn't surprise anybody that I'm on LinkedIn.
Are you now?
I am on LinkedIn. I am searchable under my initials, JD, no periods, Gershbein, and I'm sure you'll have the requisite links up on the site. And I run a little company called Owlish Communications, so they can find me at www.owlishcommunications, plural.com, like the bird, owlish. What a marvelous creature the owl is. And I'm pretty accessible out there. I'm not hiding from anybody.
Absolutely. Yeah. When I wanted to get you on the show, I contacted you on LinkedIn and you responded within about 10 minutes or so.
Well, you happen to be incredibly polite,
and
well-spoken, and cordial. So you made me an offer I couldn't refuse.
There we go. Well, JD, we've so enjoyed our conversation today, and I hope to have you back when the book comes out.
Well, thank you, Rachel. The fact that I'm even on here is a testimonial to the power of LinkedIn, because without it, I don't set foot in Houston. I don't do that talk for the BMA. You're not in the audience. I'm not on this program. And I have a huge debt of gratitude to LinkedIn. It has completely changed the way I look, think, and act, really. I mean, it's created a livelihood, but it's brought me in touch with great people like you as well.
Oh, absolutely. Same here. Okay, JD, thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Have a good day.
Likewise.
All right. Bye. Many thanks again to JD Gershbein for sharing his insights on content marketing on LinkedIn in this week's interview. Again, you can find JD online at owlishcommunications.com, and you can find him on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/JD Gershbein, and that is JD Gershbein, and I will, of course, provide that link to you in the blog post. Now it's time for our content marketing tip of the week. For today's tip, I want to talk about social images. I'm sure you've noticed that visuals are taking over social media, whether it's photos shared on Facebook or on Instagram. As we mentioned, even LinkedIn is getting in on the visual content sharing game. Visuals are all over the place, and they are the pieces of content that are getting noticed. They are getting likes, they're getting comments, they're getting shares. So if you're not currently using visuals, it's a good time to think about adding them to your content marketing strategy. And I'm not necessarily talking about photographs. Photographs are great. Instagram is so popular right now. By all means, be taking and sharing photos at things like events. Absolutely keep that up. But think about ways to turn your verbal content into visuals. So if you are sharing a tip, for example, think about, rather than just tweeting out the tip or sharing that tip, maybe putting it into a visual, something that you might see in a PowerPoint presentation, and sharing that as an image. And it's actually pretty easy to put those images together. You actually do not need to be an expert at Photoshop to do something like that. For example, we shared some sources in today's content hit of the week, that blog post that shared some free resources to help you create powerful visuals. And something you can even do if you want to create something really quickly, you can go into PowerPoint and just put together the image that you want to share as a slide, and then you can do a let's see, what is it? You go to select all, and then there's a right-click Save As Picture feature. And you can save it as just a regular JPEG, and then you are good to go to upload that to your social media network of choice. So there are lots of easy-to-use options out there, and I really encourage you to check them out. So the next time you want to share a quick tip or a quote or some other piece of short content, think about presenting it as an image and see what happens to your engagement levels. Okay, campers, that is it for me this week. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Content Marketing Podcast. I want to say thanks again to our LinkedIn expert, J.D. Gershbein, also known as the LinkedIn Catalyst, for giving his insights on content marketing on LinkedIn. Had a great conversation, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. If you like what you've heard today, please feel free to subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher or via our RSS feed. And if you really like what you've heard, please leave us a quick review on iTunes. I would so appreciate it. For more information about content marketing, you're welcome to visit our blog at resonancecontent.com/blog, where you'll also find links to our pages on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and other social networks. If you'd like to email me a question to cover in an upcoming tip of the week, I have a brand new URL to share with you. You can go to askrachelparker.com and just go to that page and enter your question, and we will get it answered for you. As always, I like to leave you with a quote, and today's comes from the auto racing great Mario Andretti. He once said, quote, "If things seem under your control, you're just not going fast enough," unquote. Again, this is Rachel Parker with Resonance Content Marketing. Thank you again for listening, and we'll see you again next week. Take care.